Welcome to the Kara's Cure Show, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness for your mind, body, and spirit. I'm Kara Sundlun. We certainly know sleep is so important for our wellness, but if you're a parent of a newborn, that can certainly be hard to come by, and that's why I'm so excited to have the woman known as the baby sleep guru. Alisha McCarthy is here. She's a certified infant and toddler sleep consultant from the Pediatric Sleep Academy. She's also helped hundreds of families get more sleep. So welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
And for our Connecticut viewers, that's where you first started to sleep. You were born and raised in West Haven.
Yes, correct. I was born and raised in West Haven. My whole family still lives in the North Haven area, but now I live in New Jersey with my husband and my two kids. And actually, we have a little mother-in-law set up as well. She has her own apartment next door, so we have help from her, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. So let's dive into the baby sleep thing. I mean, at first, as a mom of two kids, I know it's a little bit of a free-for-all, and each baby can be a little different. So are some babies is it just more difficult for them to sleep and more difficult than for the parents to get them on a schedule?
So I'm a firm believer that in that newborn phase from 0 to 16 weeks, it really does depend on more of your type of baby. And really that's where that phrase applies, every baby is truly different. However, after that 16-week or 4-month time frame, I'm a true believer that any baby that's had trouble sleeping or is having trouble sleeping could truly become a great little sleeper, because so much is developing between those 0 to 16 weeks that their sleep is so immature, their sleep cycles are immature, and a lot of other things too. Their gastro system still developing, which makes some babies gassier than others or have reflux and things like that really do affect sleep a lot. However, those things start to develop and mature, and around that 4-month mark, sleep matures as well in terms of sleep cycles really shift. And I'm a firm believer that even if they had a lot of trouble previously, they could become great little sleepers.
Well, I know that's music to the ears of many exhausted parents. So I want to talk a little bit about the beginning. I mean, how did this start for you? You were a mom and you really thought sleep was really important to you. And then now you've spent years perfecting this and teaching other parents.
Yes. So I have two kids, one who is actually 4 years old today, is his birthday, and the other one is just turned 2 in March, a boy and a girl. And when I first had my son in 2019, I was still working full time as an occupational therapist. I took my maternity leave, I went back to work, and my son was about 4.5 months, I would say. And he was a decent sleeper. I tried as best as I can to research things on Instagram and Google and, try to follow wake windows and do my best. So he was a decent sleeper, but he still wasn't the best. So I tried to switch things around and really tried to work on his sleep. And I became very passionate about it. And I saw how it affected me at my full-time job when I was getting such great sleep. In the beginning, I remember I went out to see one of my patients and my eyes were literally closing. And she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm just so tired." And I was like, I have to do something about this. This is affecting now my career, my at-home life, me as a wife, things like that. So I knew it was important for me to figure out how to get even more sleep. So my son was always and still is a great sleeper. However, when I had my daughter, I learned a lot more. I learned more science behind sleep. I didn't officially take this course until last summer, and started my business then. But I really just dived into the sleep and science component of it. I knew some other people that were also applying similar methods with their children as well. So I did more research on it, and it made a world of difference with my daughter being such a great sleeper. And she was a great sleeper from the start. And then she went through that typical 4-month sleep regression that a lot of people hear about. And then I just continued with my program, and she did great with it. And she has always been a really great sleeper. And it was been a game changer for everything. I now only work per diem as an occupational therapist. However, I've always been, my family could, attest to this as well, but I've always been a great sleeper, and sleep has always been my priority. So I knew I had to do something and help families. And I was actually helping a ton of my friends' kids behind the scenes. And my husband looked at me and goes, "You need to really make this official. I really think you could do such great things with this. You're so passionate about it. And you also have that occupational therapy background."
Yeah.
And finally, I became certified to make it official. And it's been more than I ever imagined.
That's amazing. And I know people who are listening are going, okay, give me how do I do this? How do I get my baby to sleep? So let's talk at first. And people can work with you. They can find you on Instagram at The Baby Sleep Guru. You've got lots of information on your website. But let's talk about the science behind sleep. When you say science behind sleep, especially when we're talking about newborns, what do you mean?
So in the newborn phase, like I was saying earlier, between 0 to 16 weeks, their sleep cycles, their circadian rhythm is truly underdeveloped. It's not matured. So really the basics around newborn sleep is differentiating between day and nighttime. A lot of little ones struggle with day and nighttime confusion. So making sure during the day from 0 to 12 weeks that naps are in the sunlight, and nighttime for bedtime is dark, 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 to help them differentiate between that day and nighttime sleep to really start maturing their circadian rhythms. However, the circadian rhythm doesn't truly develop until 12 weeks. So then after 12 weeks, we really want to be focusing on naps also being in some darkness, nighttime also being in darkness as well, and those early morning hours as well in terms of their environment. Then going back to the newborn phase, really focusing on when they're sleeping, simulating an environment that is like a womb environment. So dark, a sound machine. This is in terms of night. And also during the day, a sound machine is fine as well. So really just laying that foundation, getting day and night set, making sure your baby isn't overtired in that newborn this time frame is so critical. So just following wake windows in terms of age appropriate wake windows. Really in the beginning, we're really looking at between 60, very beginning, first couple of weeks of life, 45 to 60 minutes. So that really looks like maybe a feeding, maybe a diaper change, and then they're ready again for a nap. And then as they get a little bit older, we widen that wake window a little bit, more and more and more. And we're really looking for those sleepy cues, red eyes, rubbing their eyes, yawning, a big yawn. Maybe they go into a blank stare, or once we're participating in, laying on their mat and they were engaged and then they became cranky. Things like that we're really looking for in the beginning to nail down those wake windows and optimal sleep times to avoid them from becoming overtired.
Yeah, so is it realistic to schedule, so to speak? I mean, I know when you're talking about a newborn, but parents will know, like, how do I get on a sleep schedule? And I remember when I was doing this with my kids, it kind of, I guess it was more of a rhythm than a schedule, at least for me, when they were really little.
Mm-hmm. You're right. So I get that question a lot when I have newborn families reach out to me, and I'm always 100% honest. Newborn sleep is so erratic. It's unpredictable, and that is completely normal. So I say, enjoy the snuggles, enjoy the contact naps, let them sleep on you. Our main focus is avoiding overtired at these ages. So it really doesn't, the schedule doesn't come closer to that 12 to 16 mark. And really when I start to make set plans for my families, when we really start to work one-on-one together around that 4-month time frame, that is when that schedule piece and timing comes together. So newborn phase, every day looks different. Your ideal day is going to be getting your little one down at those wake windows and them taking a nice nap, meaning an hour or longer nap, and them being pretty well rested. That is your ideal day. Getting full feedings is a huge focus at this age. So every 2 to 3 hours, closer to the 3 hour mark, every newborn's really different with that. But really getting those full feedings is going to be critical for nighttime sleep as well in the beginning. And then around that 4 month mark, we're really going to, because the circadian rhythm develops in the body then, that's when we're really going to start to see that schedule come together. And that's really what I focused on with my families.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the books that I liked was, and I think she was in occupational therapy, but she was the baby whisperer, and it talked about really watching those cues. And she had a easy eat, activity, sleep, you, but it was just like kind of knowing that rhythm. But one of the advice I had from someone I worked with at that time with that book and this was, don't let them sleep all day. They're going to give you one window and then you need to wake them up. She would tell me to do a cold washcloth and be like, wake them up, to make them eat during the day, to tank them up with calories. Is that something parents should be working on? How do you do that?
Absolutely. So there is a misconception a lot that we should just, let babies, don't wake a sleeping baby. I remember when I had my son, my mom would say that often to me, like, why would you wake him up if he's sleeping? However, we want to save some sleep pressure for nighttime as well. And again, we want to differentiate that day and nighttime sleep. So by doing so, waking them every 2 hours. So a 2 hour nap is the max we want to go in this newborn phase, so that you could then get a feeding in, because right, the full feedings is going to be so important. So to prepare for night, to get those longer stretches at night, then do your little awake time activity. Maybe that's just a diaper change, a burping. That might be all it may be in the beginning when they're really, really tiny. And then working on getting them down for that next nap. So absolutely, we don't want a baby sleeping 3, 4 hours at a time, right when they first come home, because they're really going to have trouble with that day and night.
Okay, all right. We want that. If they're going to give you a stretch, you want it to be at night when you need it, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you mentioned wake windows. I'm not sure that I know what that is. What's a wake window?
So a time frame from when a little one wakes up from a nap to until the next nap happens.
Okay, okay. One of our producers who just came back from maternity leave says she's loved this app, Napper, that I guess back in the days of, we used to log stuff. Now I guess you put it in there and it starts predicting sleep patterns. Or what do you want parents to do as they're trying to get their kids to sleep better?
So I am all about, in the beginning, in that newborn phase, 0 to 12 weeks, really your main focus should be those full feedings. Try to follow an eat, play, sleep type of schedule. So eating, play, which like I said in the beginning, could be very much a diaper change, a burp, and then they're ready for their next nap, because that wake window starts from the time that they wake up from the last nap until the time of the next nap, where the next nap should land. So it might look like a feeding, a diaper change, and now all of that together with little ones in the beginning, especially ones that nurse, and even bottle feeders as well, take a long time to eat. You have to stop and burp. You want to make sure you get that time in. So that may look like your entire wake window that is 45 minutes or 60 minutes in the very, very beginning. So that's really what you're aiming for. And then trying to increase those wake windows as they get older. That's going to be really, really key, and not to stress about if you have to rock your little one to sleep or nurse to sleep in the beginning. I know so many moms are so concerned about making sure they're working on putting their little one down to sleep awake or drowsy. And that is great. We should be practicing that, especially from 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks on. You should try to practice that one nap a day, putting them down awake, seeing if they could put themselves to sleep, that type of thing. But don't stress. The newborn phase is all about getting them well rested, lots of cuddles, that bonding, all of that is so important.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then once you get past that, say you keep, the 0 to 12 or 0 to 14 weeks, and you're really starting to train a little bit, sleep train, is that different? What happens then?
So at that I tell families reach out to me. Sometimes families reach out to me earlier, and I just give them some helpful tips and tricks. It's called my newborn program. Really, it's like a plan to get you through that newborn time frame. So just some helpful tips and tricks, like we were just talking about, basically, to lay the foundation in preparation for when we formally work together at that 4 month or 16-week time frame. And the reason we start at that time is because sleep cycles have now developed from newborn to now adult like sleep cycles. So they're no longer cycling between two sleep cycles in the newborn phases. Now they're into 4 sleep cycles, just like our type of sleep. They go through REM sleep, all of that. So it's deeper sleep, into lighter sleep, back and forth all night long. So that's why at 4 months is the perfect time for us to be starting to work together, because now their 3 nap schedule has matured due to their circadian rhythms being matured at this age. They're ready for that clock-based type schedule that we were talking about, something really to follow and aim for every day, shifting away from wake windows and really focusing on that circadian rhythm, the science of sleep when melatonin's at its highest. That's what we're going to be aiming for nap times, all of that, and again, avoiding a little one from becoming overtired.
Okay. So, what are some misconceptions we have about sleep training and the whole, oh, let them cry it out? I mean, you're going to hear everything when you start telling people you're trying to get your baby sleeping. So, what are some of the big misconceptions we have about sleep training?
So I think the biggest one is exactly what you just said. People reach out to me all the time and they think that sleep training is involved with cry it out. And yes, that is one method, is if that's what you choose. If you look at me and say, I am completely okay, with my little one being put down, letting them cry it out and seeing them in the morning. Okay, if that's what you want to do, I really personalize my plan and make it so that everybody feels comfortable with it, then okay, that is one method. However, there are many more methods depending on what your level of comfort is with letting your little one cry, or maybe not cry at all. I have methods that involve no crying at all. Do they take longer? Yes, because it's confusing. Their babies are being picked up, put back down. It is very confusing for the baby, and it's a lot harder on the baby than on us. I would say that's another big misconception, is that it's a lot harder. I'm sorry, on us than the baby. I said that wrong. So they are actually just crying sometimes because it's the change. It's something new. Maybe you were nursing them to sleep, rocking them to sleep prior to this, prior to working with me. And now we're going to really focus on laying them down awake and having them learn how to find their comfy spot, how to self soothe, but being there also to support them and guide them through the process. And so when they're laid down that first night and they're like, hey, this is different. I was rocked to sleep. I was fed to sleep, and now I'm just being laid down here in my crib. Of course, a baby can't speak, so their natural reaction is going to be to cry. And a lot of people think that automatically crying is because a baby feels left alone or hurt or something like that, when that's not it at all. They're just crying because it's something different. And my most popular method is when we go in and check after certain time intervals. So I teach my families what to look for on the monitor, signs that they're learning to self soothe. When do we go in and interrupt that process to let them know, hey, I'm still here. I'm with you. Everything's okay. I'm just letting you try to figure that out. So that is my most common method. And then there's modifications to all methods depending on what my families want. I've worked with children who've had certain disabilities where we had to be very careful about what we did at bedtime in terms of if they were able to cry at all, things like that. So, I had to really work with the family on modifying to make sure we're really, really meeting specific needs for that baby.
Yeah, so it's great that you have all these different methods depending on what a family wants, and also, of course, depending on the baby. But I guess you want us to understand that sleep is a skill. Like, we really do have to teach it to our babies.
Yes. Yes, exactly. There are only about 5% of little ones who actually learn that skill pretty easily without being taught it. So the other 95% actually need to be taught this skill of sleep. And going back to that whole concept of at the 4 month mark, developmentally, sleep is changing from newborn like sleep cycles to now adult like cycles. So that wakefulness period in the middle of the night after a light sleep stage ends, and just like we wake up in the middle of the night and shift positions and things like that, and sometimes we come fully awake, that happens to babies after 4 months. And if they don't understand or learn that skill of putting themselves back to sleep after a sleep cycle, which happens every 2 to 3 hours at night, they will be constantly waking up throughout the night. So that's why it's so important.
When do we stop feeding them in the middle of the night and maybe do something else, like just comfort them?
That's such a great question. So when I make an individualized plan for a family, I always ask, what would you like inside the plan? Do you want one feeding? Do you not want a feeding? And most importantly, I make sure that they get pediatrician approval for no feedings, meaning if your little one is on the developmental charts and in a high percentage, maybe 80%, 90% in their growth charts in terms of weight gain, usually the doctors will say they don't need a feeding in the middle of the night. They are getting plenty of food. They could go fine throughout the night without a feeding. So I always make sure, especially with my 4 month old babies, like so right at that 16-week 4 month mark, families who reach out, if they say that they don't want a feeding in the middle of the night, I say, first, let's ask your doctor to make sure. And then we will, knock out that feeding in the middle of the night. And that may look like weaning down if you're nursing. So decreasing the amount of minutes that you're nursing in that middle of the night feed. Or even if it's 2 middle of the night feeds, decreasing the minutes down from each feed or eliminating one first and then the other. And that's really where that individualized portion of my plans really comes into play, because I'm really looking at, okay, what do we have to do to meet your goals, to meet your baby's goals, all of that. But really, it comes down to when doctors say that a little one is ready to not need a feeding in the night and actually want them to take more during the day. So I always tell my families, add ounces to the bottle during the day or nurse for more minutes during the day so that they are getting more during the day and less at night.
Yeah, so we want to shift that. For mom, I mean, the reason we're doing this, right, is moms and dads too, but especially if you're nursing, it's moms can be really sleep deprived, and especially if they're going back to work and all that, they're just dying to get sleep, as you felt. What should moms be doing when the babies are sleeping? Should we always be trying to sleep when the baby is sleeping?
So in terms of daytime, I think the best thing you could do, when they're napping and for daytime sleep, if you feel like you need to get some rest. Don't feel bad about that. That's my best advice. If there's dishes that have to be done, let them wait. If there's things that need to be cleaned, wait, rest, and then get to them. And when your little one is taking such great long naps more consistently, you're going to have time for it all during their naps, especially when they're young. They're taking after 4 months, 2 big naps a day and then a little cat nap. You're going to have a lot of time to do things in the house. Now at night, I really do think that when they get to bed early and that their nights are more consistent, they're going to get either sleeping fully through the night, 11 to 12 hours, or maybe they're going to sleep at least 9 or 10 hours, then a feeding, and then back to sleep. Now you have your whole evenings that free up. Maybe you spend time with your spouse. Maybe you get a date night out, or maybe some time with your friends, or whatever that may look like, sitting on the couch watching a movie. And then at night, I really try to get yourself back on your own sort of sleep schedule so that you have time. Maybe you set an alarm and you wake up before your baby wakes up and have a cup of coffee, maybe work out, things like that, so that you are also getting that self-care that we all need as moms, as dads, as caregivers.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. And I know it's sometimes difficult when you've got little ones, but even the little things are going to make a difference. Is there, there's also the talk about cluster feeding, that they get really cranky around that 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. time, and maybe just feed them on demand so that you can kind of tank them up. Do you support that, or is there science behind that?
So I definitely support that. And like I said, with the newborn phase, I really do think every baby is different with that. And so some may cluster feed. However, I do think a lot of these things like cluster feeding, symptoms of when people automatically think their babies are colic. Colic is an absolute real thing and is very common. However, it could be mistaken sometimes for colic behavior for actually a baby just being overtired.
Mm.
So sometimes when we're missing those sleepy cues, or we're waiting, or we think, oh, if they stay up longer, they're actually going to sleep better at night. That is a huge misconception. Sleep begets sleep. So the more sleep that happens in the day at the right times, and capping, like we talked about at that 2 hour time frame, the better they're going to sleep at night. So we actually, that whole cluster feeding concept, sometimes I think, absolutely, I think sometimes with nursing moms, it increases their supply and it's an important thing to do and read your baby's cues. But actually, it might be more that they're overtired, and sometimes hunger cues and overtiredness, they intertwine and can be mistaken for each other.
Yeah, yeah. So as we've got just a couple of minutes left before we're going to end our time together, but if you were to sum it up, what's one real important takeaway, moms who are listening and dads too, you really want people to understand? If you get one thing from the baby sleep guru, what can you start doing tonight?
I would say avoid, the biggest thing is avoid your little one becoming overtired. Do not push back bedtime because you think they will sleep later if bedtime is later. That will not happen. In fact, if they didn't nap well for the day, or if you had a day where you were on the go or out and about, and your little one, I'm even talking about 3 and 4 year olds as well, not just babies, they need to have a bedtime earlier than their normal bedtime. So, my biggest takeaway would be, don't hesitate for that earlier bedtime, if it needs to happen, because it will actually benefit and help your little one sleep better. To prevent them from becoming overtired is going to be key and will help them throughout the night for staying asleep, falling asleep, morning hours, all of that.
Is there an average bedtime? Like, does it need to be 7? Or what about working parents who want to kind of push it till 9? Is there an average bedtime that you really will work better for little kids?
So typically from that 4 month time frame on, we're aiming more, we're really looking at the day. So let's say 4 months to maybe 2 years old, let's just say we're really looking at how their day is. How did their nap go? If all went great and they slept really well for their naps, then we're looking at like a 6:45, 7 o'clock bedtime. I would say more like 7 o'clock. However, if naps were bad, the earliest a little one could go to sleep is actually 5:30. I know it's crazy, but 5:30. Not a 2 year old, anything less than 1 years old. I would say that could happen if naps were horrible. Maybe they skip naps, things like that. However, when your little one gets down to one nap, I really think trying to stay more towards a set bedtime is really helpful. So if they take one nap in the middle of the day, really aiming more towards 7:30 for a bedtime is really going to be key. And any
Yeah,
child under the age of 5 should not have a bedtime that is later than 8 o'clock.
later than 8
And that
o'clock.
is because, yep, and that is because adrenaline is released after 8 o'clock and could actually make it very hard to have a little one fall asleep and stay asleep through the night. So trying to get them down, even if it's like 7:50 in their bed or crib or whatever it may be, that's going to be helpful.
Alicia, thank you so much. We're out of time, but you can find more information at Kara Sundlun. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Have a great day and be well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.